Now that we've explored soil classification, let's turn our attention to soil surveys. The USDA actually developed the soil classification system specifically for use in these surveys. So, what is a soil survey? Well, it's a comprehensive process that classifies, locates on a base map, and describes soils as they are observed in the field. Essentially, a soil survey tells us exactly what soils are present in a given location, what their properties are, and most importantly, how they could be used. With the new Web Soil Survey, there's a ton more info added every time I use it, it seems. We'll be diving into that magic this year. These soil surveys are conducted under a joint effort called the National Cooperative Soil Survey Program, involving the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, and state agricultural experiment stations. The majority of the actual surveying is carried out by dedicated NRCS soil scientists. So how do soil scientists actually conduct a survey? It starts with preliminary research, looking at existing older surveys or documents like aerial photographs. Then it's out into the field. For detailed mapping, a soil scientist traditionally walks the land, stopping frequently to probe the soil, and by examining the soil profile at that spot, they can accurately classify it into the correct soil series. They also meticulously note important features like slope, evidence of erosion, and other interesting landscape characteristics. All this information is then used to draw the boundaries of the soil series or phases directly onto a base map, which is commonly an aerial photograph. Aerial photos are ideal because they show clear landscape features, ponds, woods, sand pits, which often indicate natural boundaries between different soil types. Once the fieldwork is complete, the map is neatly copied. You'll see codes on these maps like ZMB in the example from Anoka County, Minnesota. ZM stands for Zimmerman soil, and the B indicates a gently sloping phase with a 2 to 6% slope. If there's no third part of the code, it means there is no noticeable erosion. To effectively use a soil map, you need to understand its language, the symbols and codes. As we just discussed, the codes have one, two, or maybe three parts. The first part always refers to the soil series. Any subsequent codes provide information about slope and erosion. If these are absent, you can assume a nearly level terrain with no erosion. Beyond these codes, soil maps also use various symbols to indicate important landscape features like large gullies, deep ravines, drainage ditches, small potholes, or areas with surface stones and boulders. Learning to read these symbols is key to interpreting a soil map accurately. While the traditional feet on the ground observation is still critical, modern soil surveying has been revolutionized by technology. You know it, GPS and GIS. It's indispensable. With GPS units, surveyors can identify their precise location far more readily and accurately than by relying solely on landmarks. This means every piece of data collected in the field can be recorded with an exact geographic location. And then GIS. You know what that is, powerful computer software programs. What do? They organize and integrate all sorts of data, allows us to analyze it. And in this sense, there's a lot of remote sensing, zoning information, or watershed boundaries. GIS allows soil scientists to process this complex data set and generate a variety of detailed maps and reports. Now, remote sensing plays a crucial role. This involves gathering information about a site from a distance using sensors on planes or satellites and now even drones. While standard aerial photographs use visible light, other sensors can detect different wavelengths like infrared. This allows us to infer information about the soil from things like vegetation patterns or health, or even directly observe certain soil traits from above. So modern soil surveys are a powerful blend of classic fieldwork and cutting-edge technology. All this data collection and mapping culminates in a comprehensive resource, the Soil Survey Report. These reports are typically compiled for accounting. Now, with the new Web Soil Survey, you can make customized ones for a site, your AOI, which is really cool. Now, a complete soil survey report has four main components. Yes, a list. First, the set of detailed soil maps. Second, the map legends that explain all those symbols and codes we just discussed. Third, detailed descriptions of each soil found in the area. And fourth, crucial use and management reports for each soil. These reports provide a wealth of useful information. They list the full taxonomy of the soil, its order, suborder, and other classes. You'll find descriptions of the soil's properties for each horizon, including texture, bulk density, permeability, available water, pH, and salinity. They also include engineering properties and ratings for suitability for various uses, from urban landscaping to building construction and road design, highlighting any potential problems, and much more. These reports are invaluable guides for anyone working with land. Speaking of uses, one of the biggest ratings that soils get is capability classes. Now, what you see on this slide is the official description of each of these classes, and these are important to know. But to just brute force memorize these, that takes a lot. Now, what I like to do is try to understand how this ranking system works, and I can recreate it knowing some key characteristics. So let's look at another way that we can implant this into our brains. Okay, so here's how I critically think through this scale, and I'm able to recreate it by understanding some key points. First, you have our classes. They use Roman numerals from 1 to 8. And 1 is least restricted. It is great, arable, or farmable land. Moving to 8, which is the most restricted. Now, I like to divide these in half. Classes 1 through 4, this is classified as arable land, but as you move from class 1 to class 4, you have increasing restrictions. Now, the next thing would be what causes these restrictions? Well, one of the main hazards to soil would be slope and erosion. So that would be one. Drainage is another. You don't want waterlogged soils for cultivation. That causes issues. And then also, what's the fertility of the soil? As you have less fertile soil, you will have to fertilize, do other management to continue to make that arable land productive. Now let's look at the other half, 5 through 8. These are classified not suitable as arable or farmable land. And 5 would be the least restrictive for uses such as pasture, range, and forest lands. As you move to 8, you have more and more restrictions, and eventually you end up to where that land really is suitable to use as recreation or wildlife or even like watershed management, things like that. You're not able to use it for any type of grazing or forest products for the same restrictions as above. Also, another one that sometimes bleeds into these later capability classes is, is drought issues that dry out too much. So it's kind of the opposite of uh, waterlogged soils. So if you can think of those things, you could pretty accurately recreate that capability class ranking system. Now, you have those general capability classes, the main category. Well, then for each one of those classes, you could have a multitude of conditions that causes those restrictions. And so you have these subclasses which give what that dominant hazard is. They are lowercase letters that follow the Roman numerals of the capability classes. And there are 4 main ones. And luckily the letters kind of go along with what they are. First one, you have erosion, E, water, W, S, soil as in the soil's root zone, and C for climate. Again, this is the wordy official kind of definitions of these. Let's kind of distill these down a little bit and try to think through the descriptions so we could understand them and describe them. So as I'm studying these and trying to keep them into my brain, this is how I think through them and kind of limit the wordiness. Okay, so let's look at the first one, E, erosion. Well, dominant hazard, obviously, soil erosion. What probably causes that? Slope, right? And what would need to be done? Well, soil would need maybe cover crops to prevent erosion or some other type of protective measures for that subclass. Moving to W, W stands for water. So then the dominant hazard would be excess water. Well, how could that be caused? Well, maybe for some reason your soil's poorly drained. Could be because the soil's very thin and you got a impermeable layer underneath. You could have a high water table, or even you have overflow from slopes and other geomorphic structures. And something that can be done partially, can't absolutely fix this restriction, but it can be helped with artificial drainage. Now we go to S, soil. Soil what? That root zone. Okay, because we're thinking about most of our uses is related to farming, right? So we're looking at plant root zones, and that's the limitation. And what issues could arise there? Well, the soil could be very shallow, which doesn't allow those roots to develop fully. You could have a soil that has a low moisture holding capacity, either due to climate conditions or maybe it's too sandy and water doesn't cling to clay particles. Or you could have low fertility, droughtiness. Okay, you have long periods of time where maybe you don't get precipitation, and also salinity in the root zone could greatly limit plant growth. And then you look at climate. Okay, so this is a little different than the root zone stuff, although climate does influence that. What we're looking at when you have a C is when you have like an annual temperature or average temperature that's too cold, or you have not enough precipitation for certain crops. Okay, so remember, temperature, precipitation for climate. So, and this is how I kind of organize these to help understand them. Think through the process of identifying the hazard, what could cause it, and maybe what could be done to manage it or mitigate it. So here are two example capability classes. Okay, what I'd like you to do is just kind of take a moment. You can pause this video and try to write the description of a soil that has this capability class. So that first one, capability class 3 with a subclass W. The second one is capability class 7 with a subclass E. So need to know what's its use, what can you use it for, what's the restriction level, is there a dominant restriction, and maybe what you could do. Okay, so pause this, kind of jot something down. On the next slide, we'll go over a possible solution. Okay, looking at the first one, you see that it's 3, which is in that arable range, but it's getting closer to 4. So there must be some type of issue that causes restrictions. What is it? Well, you look at the subcategory, W means excess water, right? So it has drainage issues specifically, which, what could you do? Well, artificial drainage could help, and there's other management practices, okay? Now let's look at number 2. We're in class 7, which makes it non-arable, right? And we are getting close to 8, so there must be some hazard we got to account for. E, erosion, which would be steep slopes, and that creates the erosion hazard. How's it restricted? Well, it'd be restricted to pasture, range, forest land. And you might have to do some management, right? Okay, so that's kind of the basic process there. Okay, let's wrap this up. Soil classification surveys are not just academic exercises. They are absolutely vital tools for understanding and effectively managing our natural resources. Think about it. Food chain. We always start with the producers. Well, those producers, the plants, need soil, plus all of the ecosystem that lives in the soil, which is fascinating. We'll get into that in the chapter Life in the Soil. But it is a slowly renewable resource that can easily be destroyed, and it's very important to manage. And by classifying these soils, we create a common language to understand their characteristics, and then through surveys, we gain a clear picture of where the diverse soils are found, how they behave, and how we can use them. The end.